The room had gone quiet before anyone understood why. It was Muhammad Ali, the man who had called himself the greatest, who would float like a butterfly and sting like a bee in front of 60,000 people, who had taken Joe Frazier's best shot and come back grinning. And he was standing completely still, not bobbing, not shadowboxing, not filling the air with those famous words that rolled off his tongue like thunder announcing itself. Still, his son, Muhammad Ali Jr., was 17 years old that afternoon, all nervous energy and borrowed bravado. He had asked the question the way teenagers ask questions they believe have obvious answers, loud, in front of people, certain he already knew what was coming. "Dad," he said, loud enough for the room to hear, "are you afraid of Bruce Lee?" The silence that followed lasted 10 full seconds. Not the polite pause of a man searching for words. Not the theatrical hesitation of someone performing humility. This was something different. Muhammad Ali, who had faced Sonny Liston, who had defied the United States government, who had stood in Zaire before 100,000 people in the rain and refused to blink, was measuring his answer with the kind of care men reserve only for true things. And then he said it. This is that story. To understand what that silence meant, you have to understand who Muhammad Ali was in the autumn of 1972. The city was Los Angeles. The venue was the Main Street Gym in downtown, a place that smelled of canvas and old sweat and ambition, where the ceiling lights hung low and yellowed and the speed bags made their hollow drumbeat morning to night. It was a Thursday, October 19th, to be precise, and the Santa Ana winds were pushing hot air through the cracked windows, the kind of dry heat that makes men irritable and honest. Ali had come to the gym not for a public workout, but for something closer to a reunion. He was between bouts, his career in one of its brief and reluctant pauses, and he had been told, by people he trusted, that something worth seeing was happening on the West Side. Muhammad Ali at 30 years old was an argument made flesh. 6 feet 3 inches tall, 212 pounds at fighting weight, though he carried it with the ease of a man half the size. His reach was 78 inches, a span that let him land punches from angles most fighters couldn't even theorize. His professional record stood at 46 wins and 2 losses, with 35 knockouts scattered across opponents who included the hardest hitters of a generation. He had knocked out Sonny Liston in 1 round. He had broken down George Chuvalo across 15 rounds that left both men ancient. He had, just 2 years earlier, beaten Oscar Bonavena in 15 rounds before dropping him 3 times in the 15th alone. The 2 losses, to Frazier at the Garden in 71 and to Ken Norton in 73, which was still months ahead, only sharpened the argument. Ali lost the way mountains weather, slowly and only on the surface. Beneath the surface, he remained what he had always been, the fastest heavyweight in history, with reflexes measured by the Oakland Athletics coaching staff at 4.8 millisecond response time, which meant his hands moved faster than most opponents' eyes could register. Angelo Dundee, his trainer, said Ali had the footwork of a welterweight attached to the frame of a light heavyweight. He shouldn't be possible, Dundee said once to the press, and every day he goes out and proves that he is. But here is what the record doesn't capture. Ali dominated not through destruction, but through architecture. He constructed the geometry of each fight in the first round, identified the angles, mapped the reach, and then spent the remaining rounds operating inside a solution he had already completed. His jab, a punch so refined it had its own taxonomy among boxing analysts, could stop a charge, change a man's head position, and set up the right hand, all in one motion. He threw it from a shoulder height that most trainers considered wrong, that most boxers couldn't replicate, and that worked anyway because Ali's timing made the theory irrelevant. He was also genuinely funny, quick, warm in the way that very powerful people sometimes are freely, because they have nothing to prove. In the gym that Thursday morning, he moved through a small crowd of maybe 20 people, shaking hands, signing a kid's notebook, doing the rope-a-dope shuffle for no reason other than that it made a woman near the back laugh. His son Muhammad Jr. was with him, practically vibrating with the particular energy of a teenager in his father's element, drinking in the attention that spilled naturally off the man beside him. Ali Jr. had grown up watching his father on television, in training camps, in the ring. He had seen what his father could do, and he had also, over the past several months, become obsessed with something he'd been watching on a very different kind of screen. He had been watching Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee arrived at the Main Street gym at 10:17 in the morning, and he arrived the way he always arrived anywhere, not loudly. He was wearing dark slacks and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow, the collar open. No gym bag, no entourage. He was 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed, at that moment, approximately 138 pounds, roughly the same weight as the heaviest punching bag hanging from the ceiling behind him. His wrists, visible where the sleeves were folded back, were corded in a way that seemed architecturally impossible for someone that lean. His knuckles on both hands were scarred along the first 2 knuckle ridges, the skin there thickened and slightly discolored, the product of years of striking practice against wooden boards, canvas bags, and a custom-made dummy that he designed himself based on the Mukyen Jong used in Wing Chun training. He stood near the entrance for perhaps 30 seconds without moving toward anyone, and in that time his eyes moved across the gym with a specificity that was hard to describe but impossible to miss. Not the casual sweep of a man looking for someone he knows. Something more like calibration. The way an engineer walks into a building he's considering buying. A man named Robert Klaus, who would go on to direct Enter the Dragon the following year, was standing near the heavy bags when Bruce Lee walked in. He later said, in an interview recorded in 1978, that there was something about the way Lee entered a room that made you understand, before a single word was spoken, that the conversation's terms had just been quietly renegotiated. Bruce Lee was there that morning because he knew someone who knew Ali's team. The details were casual. A phone call, a mutual contact in the film business, an informal invitation. He was not there to compete. He was not there to demonstrate anything. He had, at that point, spent nearly 2 decades studying the physics of human combat from a perspective that most martial artists didn't even have language for yet. He had trained in Wing Chun under Ip Man in Hong Kong. He had studied boxing. He had absorbed elements of fencing, Western wrestling, judo. He had, just 6 months earlier, written in his personal journal, "The truth is outside of all fixed patterns." He had come to watch Muhammad Ali. But here's where it changes. Muhammad Ali Jr. saw him first. The boy was 17. That's the context you need. Muhammad Ali Jr. was at an age when the world is organized into tests, and the correct response to every test is confidence, performed at maximum volume. He had watched Enter the Dragon, or at least the footage of Bruce Lee that was already circulating in training camps and gyms, because the film itself was still 3 months from release. He had sparred in the gym. He had watched his father work, and he had arrived at a theory. The way teenagers arrive at theories, which is to say with absolute certainty. He crossed the gym floor and stopped 2 feet in front of Bruce Lee. "My dad can beat you," he announced. Not asking, not speculating. The kind of statement designed to generate a reaction, preferably an emotional one. Bruce Lee looked at the boy. Not down. He had to adjust only slightly. His expression did not change. "My dad," Ali Jr. said again, louder now, aware that 3 or 4 people had turned to listen, "would knock you out in the first round." A trainer named Eddie Futch, who was standing near the corner, later said that the room's ambient noise dropped noticeably. Not because people were being rude, because something about the moment commanded attention without seeming to ask for it. Futch would describe it 15 years later as the sensation of watching someone play a piece of music that starts very quietly, and you lean in without deciding to lean in. Inside Bruce Lee, something was happening that the room could not see. He was not angry. He was not amused, exactly. He was, and this is the best word for it, interested. He understood what the boy was doing. He had grown up in Hong Kong running with street gangs, and he had been challenged exactly this way, in exactly this public register, more times than he could number. The challenge was not really about him. It was about the boy's need to locate himself relative to his father's legend. Bruce understood that the same way a doctor understands the symptom before the patient does. But he was also being offered something. A question, if you read it correctly. The boy was asking, in the loudest possible way, whether what Bruce Lee had was real, whether it held up against the biggest thing in the boy's world. Bruce Lee looked past the boy to where Muhammad Ali was standing, now watching, 20 feet away. Ali's expression was unreadable. His arms were folded. He was absolutely still in the way that very large, very capable people go still when they are genuinely paying attention. A man named Jim Kelly, who would also appear in Enter the Dragon, put a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Easy," Kelly said quietly. Not a reprimand, a caution. The way you caution someone standing at the edge of something larger than they realize. Bruce Lee spoke for the first time since entering the gym. His voice was not loud. The people nearest him could hear it clearly. The people 10 feet away had to guess at it from the shapes his mouth made. He said, "Let him speak." And he looked back at the boy and waited. Muhammad Ali Jr., who had expected resistance or dismissal or performance, found himself wrong-footed by simple attention. "Well," he said, "aren't you going to say something?" Bruce Lee said, "What would you like me to say?" The question was not deflection. It was the most serious question in the room. The boy didn't know what to do with it. And then Muhammad Ali was walking across the gym toward them, and the conversation changed entirely. What followed was not a fight. That framing matters. The word fight implies two men in opposition, each trying to prevail. What happened in the Main Street gym that Thursday morning in October 1972 was something different. It was a conversation conducted in the only language where misunderstanding is impossible. Ali reached his son first, put both hands on the boy's shoulders in the easy way of fathers who have done this 10,000 times, and moved him gently to the side. "Go stand over there," he said, not unkindly, the tone of a man managing a situation with more variables than he wants to explain right now. Then Muhammad Ali looked at Bruce Lee directly for the first time. The size differential was absolute. Ali outweighed Lee by 74 pounds. He had a 12-inch reach advantage. Every structural measurement that boxing used to predict outcome favored Ali by a margin that would, in any conventional analysis, have been the entire story. Ali's jab alone, the weapon that had scrambled Sonny Liston's defenses like a machine eating paper, could theoretically cover the distance between the two men in less than 140 milliseconds. Ali stuck out his right hand. "I've seen your films," he said. "Some of them." Bruce Lee shook the hand. "I've studied your fights," he said. "All of them." There was a beat. Ali's eyes narrowed slightly, not in hostility, but in the way of a man recalibrating. "Then you know what I can do," Ali said. "I know what you have done," Bruce Lee said, which is not the same thing. The room, which had been pretending to resume its business, stopped pretending. What Ali said next would not be repeated to the press. The two men moved to the open center of the gym floor, and what happened in the following 7 minutes was witnessed by approximately 22 people, none of whom gave an identical account of it, though all agreed on the essential architecture of what they saw. Ali threw the jab first, not at full power. This was not a brawl, and both men understood that, but not a demonstration either. Ali's jab at even 60% was a different proposition than most men's best punch. It left his shoulder at the angle that had puzzled analysts for years. Too high, too exposed, technically wrong, and arrived where it intended to arrive anyway, which was at the space directly in front of Bruce Lee's chin. In the first second, the punch was not there. This sounds wrong, but 22 people saw it. Bruce Lee's upper body moved, not back, but laterally, in a motion that incorporated his hips and his right foot, and something in his shoulder that collapsed his profile by approximately 15 degrees. And the jab moved through the air where his face had been and found nothing. The entire movement covered no more than 8 inches. Not a leap, not a dive. 8 inches, precisely enough, wasting nothing. In the second, Lee's right hand was at Ali's left elbow, not gripping present. A single contact point, fingertip pressure against the joint, that gave Bruce Lee the sensory information he needed about Ali's next move before Ali had consciously committed to making it. This is centerline theory made tactile, the idea that control of the opponent's centerline, the vertical axis running from crown to groin, begins with understanding the geometry of their shoulders. In the third second, Ali's cross came, his right hand, 212 pounds behind it, 78 inches of reach, 35 knockout wins speaking in aggregate through one motion. Bruce Lee pivoted on his left foot, 6 inches. The cross went past him on the outside, and in the same motion, the same continuous, uninterrupted motion, with no visible seam between defense and offense, The edge of Lee's left hand made contact with Ali's ribs. Not a strike, exactly. A knock. The kind of knock you give a door to announce yourself. The arena held its breath. Ali stood very still. He looked down at his ribs. He looked at Bruce Lee. He did not say anything for 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds were the loudest 3 seconds in the room. What he had felt was not pain. Anyone who describes it as pain misunderstands what happened. What he felt was information. A precise, targeted communication delivered to a specific location with the minimum force necessary to convey the message. If Ali's jab was a sentence, what Bruce Lee had just done was punctuation, the kind that ends things. Eddie Futch said later, "I've been in boxing for 40 years. What I saw that morning I do not have the correct words for." They went for another 4 minutes. Ali tried the rope-a-dope, his signature defense, absorbing and waiting. Bruce Lee didn't chase. He simply repositioned methodically, finding the angle from which the defense didn't exist. He used the straight blast, a rapid series of centerline punches from Jeet Kune Do, averaging 1 contact every 0.4 seconds, not to overwhelm Ali but to map him, to understand where the openings were and how deep they went. He used a pak saw, a slapping deflection from Wing Chun, to redirect Ali's jab inward across his own body, creating a momentary cross-arm trap that Ali, with his extraordinary feel for a fight, resolved instantly, but not before Bruce Lee had already moved. At 6 minutes and 40 seconds, Ali threw a left hook that was arguably the best single punch of the exchange. It was real. It was heavy. It came from an angle that gave Lee less than 0.2 of a second to react. Bruce Lee stepped back. Not away. Not in retreat. He stepped back with his weight distributed, his hands down, his posture open. He had chosen not to continue past the point where the lesson had already been delivered. The room went silent for 5 full seconds. Then somebody near the back started clapping, and it had nothing to do with winners. They sat in the corner near the water station. 2 chairs pulled close. Everyone else found somewhere else to be. Muhammad Ali looked at the floor for a moment, then at Bruce Lee. "You're not fighting," he said. "You're doing something else." "I'm listening," Bruce Lee said. Ali's brow came down. "Listening. To the body," Bruce Lee said. "Before it decides. You telegraph slightly before your jab here." He touched his own left shoulder, a half-centimeter drop, less than a finger width. Most people will never see it, but it's there. Ali was quiet. He had been in the ring with the best fighters on the planet for 14 years. Nobody had ever told him that. "My trainer tells me I'm perfect," Ali said. "Not defensively. Observationally. Your trainer is measuring against boxers," Bruce Lee said. "I'm measuring against nothing." This is the moment that lasted. Not the exchange on the gym floor. That was method. This was the principle behind the method. Bruce Lee was describing what he had spent 20 years building. A system that used no system. A form that had shed its form. Jeet Kune Do was not a style. It was the absence of style elevated to philosophy. Be water. Take no fixed shape. Fill the container you are given, and then find the exit. Ali listened to all of this with the specific attentiveness of a man who has spent his life inside a single framework and is, for the first time, being asked to see outside it. In boxing, Ali said finally, "There are rules." "Yes," Bruce Lee said. "What you're doing has no rules." "There's one rule," Bruce Lee said. "Don't get hit." Ali looked at him. Then slowly a smile came. Not the performance smile, not the Ali smile that photographs use to terrify opponents. Something quieter. Something that belonged to the man underneath the title. "That's the same rule," Ali said. "It is the only rule," Bruce Lee said. "Everything else is decoration." They shook hands. Not the public handshake of men with cameras watching. A short, two-handed grip. The left hand over the joined right hands. The gesture of men who have understood something together that language will only approximate. Muhammad Ali Jr. was standing 10 feet away. He had watched all of it. His face wore the expression that teenagers wear when they have been shown, gently and completely, that the world is larger than their theory of it. His father turned and looked at him for a moment, then back at Bruce Lee. "My son," he said, with a particular weight on the words. Bruce Lee nodded once. "He'll be all right," he said. He asked the right question. Years later, in 1987, 15 years after that Thursday morning in October, Muhammad Ali sat for a long interview with the journalist Thomas Hauser, who was researching what would become the definitive Ali biography. The conversation ranged across everything: the fights, the politics, the faith, the losses. Hauser asked, at one point, about Bruce Lee. Ali did not hesitate. He said, "That man was not a martial artist. He was a philosopher who happened to know martial arts." He said, "The fastest hands I ever saw. Not the strongest. The fastest. And there's a difference. Strong is trying to break through. Fast is already there before you knew you were going." He said, "If I was a young man today and I could train with anyone living or dead, I'd want to understand what Bruce Lee understood, not how he moved." Why? Muhammad Ali Jr., now 41 at the time of that interview, had by then trained for 12 years in a system that blended Western boxing with elements of Jeet Kune Do. He ran a small gym in Chicago. His students, mostly teenagers, many of them from the same neighborhoods where young Cassius Clay had once learned to throw a jab, were taught something their instructor described in these words: "Don't chase what you can't catch. Be where the thing is going, not where it is." He had learned it from watching two men have a conversation without words. The students who trained under Muhammad Ali Jr. carried that lesson forward without knowing its origin. They trained harder than most gyms expected of them, because their instructor trained harder than anyone expected of him, because his father had once stood in a corner and shaken hands with a 138-pound man and come away rearranged. Second-generation impact. It works like that. The stone drops once, and the ripples don't announce what made them. Now return with me to that room. October 19th, 1972. The hot, dry wine through the cracked windows. The speed bag still going. 22 people in the Main Street Gym, Los Angeles, California, all pretending not to watch. Muhammad Ali Jr. asks, "Dad, are you afraid of Bruce Lee?" 10 seconds of silence. What was in those 10 seconds? Not fear. That was never what Ali felt about anything. Not calculation, exactly. Something more like respect operating at a frequency that didn't have a simpler name. Ali had been asked if he was afraid of Joe Frazier and answered immediately. Asked if he was afraid of George Foreman, immediately. Asked if he was afraid of the United States government when he refused induction, immediately. He took 10 seconds for Bruce Lee because Bruce Lee deserved 10 seconds. Because anything less would have been dishonest, and Ali, beneath all the theater and all the genius, was honest when it counted. What he said, after those 10 seconds, after that measured silence that the room leaned into and held, he said, "That man is not someone you're afraid of. That man is someone you respect." He said, "Afraid is for things that can hurt you. Bruce Lee doesn't hurt you. He shows you where you're not." He said, "And where you're not, that's the most frightening place there is." One question, one silence, one answer that took 15 years to fully understand. The lesson was not about size. The lesson was not about martial arts, or boxing, or which system prevails when systems collide. The lesson was about honesty, about the 10 seconds a great man takes before he speaks a true thing, about what it means to respect something larger than your own record. One moment on a gym floor, one conversation in 2 chairs, one legacy carried forward in gyms that don't know why they train the way they train. And somewhere in Chicago, a group of teenagers runs their 5th mile before the sun is up because their coach told them that the most dangerous man is the one who has already finished the thing you are still planning. They don't know where that came from, but it came from a Thursday in October, when the greatest in the world stayed quiet long enough to tell the truth. There's one more story, though. One encounter from that same period, October to December of 1972, that Ali's team never fully documented, and that the few witnesses who were present have described only in fragments and contradictions. It wasn't a gym. It wasn't public. And Bruce Lee never talked about it. The reason why, that's a story for another time.